You have found us, me, the podcast, and my fab guests who are everyday people. And together, here, we explore that's life, or is it? Cha-ching! A very warm welcome to Polly Byrne and Emily Diaz. How are you, ladies? Polly, you first.
Very good, thank you. Nice to see you, hear you even.
Indeed. And Emily, my goodness, this is your second second joining of this podcast recording. You're becoming sort of my podcast ambassador. I love it. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. Really good.
Good. So, just for the benefit of our listeners, we three came together from the training of the CCR3, and we met Orla Bantz in a previous recording, and we went into it in great detail. So what's wonderful about the CCR3, and this is not meant to be becoming into a sales thing for it, but it has just given us such incredible insights into the themes that feed into the podcast, which is that's life, or is it? So can we just explore what the different fields that you've gone into? So Emily, let's start with you.
Yeah. So after going on the CCR3 Academy course, I wanted to use the tool to look at emotional insight, guided emotional insight, mainly for women, either in leadership roles or in families that feel overwhelmed, working mums, people caring for their aging partners, just people that feel stuck and a little bit, everything's on me, with a really high mental load, high emotional load. And by using CCR3, I wanted to help people to understand the way that their patterns, their behavioural patterns, the way they look after people, the way they interact with people have developed over years, because it served them to do so. But maybe actually when we take a closer look in the mirror, we see that those patterns don't serve us in every situation. And in extremely stressful situations, they reappear. And maybe if we're more aware of them, how we can kind of unlock a few levers to help us carry less, really.
Thank you. And Polly, where have you ventured into?
Well, mine's gone in two directions. So I trained a few years ago as a health and wellbeing coach, which gave me access to doing one-to-one coaching and group coaching. With the CCR3, I can use it for the individual. So we can look when I work, especially with people in the workplace, we have a limited time on the actual delivery of the programs we have. So CCR3 profiling helps to adjust and understand the person quicker, so we can build a wellness program around that as well and direct them to a more sustainable way of living. But also I look at it through workplace wellbeing. So looking at, for example, office fit outs and how CCR3 profiling can be used as data from the offset to design spaces that are human led. It's very interesting at the moment.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that is absolutely fascinating. So, but what happens if you get a team that's made up of extremely different characters and personalities? So how then would you go about designing a workplace to suit everybody?
Well, that's a very good question, because 20 odd years ago, I did train in interior design and I did mental health studies as well, which helped me to formulate over the years that when you're in a work environment, some people work better in certain areas than others. So CCR3 profiling is very good for looking at the 7 principles and working out which staff members fit into those categories, and then designing for those spaces that fit their needs better. So some might need to be in a quiet space, where others might need to be in a more vibrant space, and others need a lot of light or need to be near a window. So it connects with the well cert as well very nicely. But it's how to develop data from the offset, which is what all companies want.
Okay. Gosh, that's completely passed me by. That's fascinating. So our theme is when we normalize pressure, so this can be at work and in life, and it kind of crosses over both of you and where you operate. So I'm really keen to explore what the insights as to what happens when we normalize pressure, and do we do that, because I don't think that's rare, and it's also quite a dangerous place to go. So Emily, let's start with you. How do you approach a situation where somebody has normalized pressure and you can see it but they can't?
Yeah, well, I think we all do it. We, especially as women, we all normalize pressure. We're not just managing a job; we're managing a family. As I say, whether that's kids, partners, parents, siblings, friendships, and we joke about it. Oh, that we can't get to sleep, and you've only got to look on Instagram and see all the mumfluencers. If I've said that right, it is a joke about how am I meant to juggle everything? The emotional load, the work-life balance, the juggle. There's always, it's so normalized that it's seen as okay, so you kind of don't feel like you're alone if you're struggling and you're feeling massively overwhelmed, and you're struggling in relationships, and you're struggling with the work-life balance, and you're struggling to feel like you're doing everything right. I think to your podcast, and I've said it to you before, it's kind of like a lot of us just go, that's life. It is the juggle, it's the emotional struggle, it's the juggle, it's everything. And I think for me, it's trying to understand, okay, there are going to be lots of things we're always going to have to manage. There's going to be lots of things we always have to juggle. But sometimes the patterns that, as a child growing up or in early relationships that we've developed, cause much more friction internally for us. So when we label ourselves, we say, oh, we're just a people pleaser. That's what I am. I'm a people pleaser. And it's kind of like, well, no, I'm not. In the past, doing what other people have wanted me to do and saying yes all the time got me through. It's how I survived. It's how, I got to where I am now. But if I keep doing that, I'm gonna drown. I'm gonna burn out. So it's trying to identify why there's always going to be a lot of tasks, but the internal pressure doesn't have to feel the same if we notice our patterns, how we deal with things when under pressure, and start to actually not train, but be aware of those high stress situations or those busy periods and go, okay, maybe I don't say yes all the time. I'm not a people pleaser. People pleasing has just got me there in the past, for example. And
So
there's so
then,
many patterns.
sorry to cut you off. So just on that note, then let's hear from Polly about what you find in the workplace and high performance industries normalizing stress. How do you approach that, Polly, when you're working with people stroke teams?
I slightly look at it differently, because obviously stress, pressure, yes, that's some people are very good at managing stress and pressure, others aren't. So I always look at it of, are people living in the fight or flight more than the rest or digest? And if we can teach them techniques and ways to be able to get more into rest and digest, they'll actually be able to recognize when they go into fight and flight. And we don't want people in fight or flight all the time, because it increases cortisol. And cortisol stays in our body for 24 hours before it's released, as a general rule. So if you're doing that day in, day out, we're just causing more stress and pressure on ourselves that leads to burnout. So it's navigating and understanding what can be delegated, CCR3 profiling as well for the individual, making sure they're in the right job, and we're not trying to ram a square peg into a round hole, and supporting the individual and the team to work effectively together in more harmony, but also being able to recognize yourself when you're at your peak of stress or going into high stress mode, and when that is needed more support from your team or an external coach. For example, myself, who can go in and do clinics and support one-to-one.
So that sounds utterly exhausting to me, being in fight or flight constantly the whole time. So I guess the danger there is, as you just sort of explained, is that if we normalize being in either one of those, then that's exactly what leads to the burnout, isn't it? It's the exhaustion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you think about some people sort of thrive off that, though, don't they? They sort of wear it as a bit of a badge. What do you?
Yeah, and some people have got all the box ticks, so they exercise well. Their nutrition's great. They've got a really supportive friends and family surrounding. So, and it also with their upbringing or genetics, there's lots of elements that can make you successful with stress, and also, of course, training throughout your life. But other people want to be successful and can't be for whatever reason, whether it being how they're brought up or diet or not knowing what you don't know. You can't resolve, can you? So there's bringing that element of education into it, so people can make adjustments and learn at whatever age of life.
Mm. However, would you agree that many people remain in denial?
Yes, because even if a behavior is bad for us, but it feels familiar, we still do it.
Mm. Emily, what do you think about that?
I think that a lot of the women that I come across, a lot of women that I work with, you ask them how they are, and it's normally tired, exhausted, and a lot of it isn't about the physical, but they don't get time to go to the gym or whatever. It's that emotional, that mental exhaustion. It's that internal fatigue, and I think we do kind of just justify it. Sometimes we do wear it as a badge of honor. Well, it's just because I'm doing everything for everyone else. I've got to do this for my mum. I'm doing this for the kids. I just don't get time for myself. And actually, we do justify it, which is fine. But we all feel it. We all feel exhausted. And I think a lot of the time is because we are sometimes overplaying conversations. We're feeling permanently responsible. We're constantly trying to make a decision, but overplaying all the different outcomes. And that is all to do with this internal friction that we have with the way that we normally behave, our patterns, our values, and what life is throwing at us. And it's just where the two don't match, where our values aren't aligned with our environment, where our behavioural patterns, we're having to adapt so much for every different audience that we're in front of. But what we just see is exhaustion. We just see fatigue, and we don't necessarily understand why. We just know it's because we've got a lot on. And I think for me, especially, and then the people that I've worked with, we could list all the things that we're going through, divorce, separation, changing job, kids, teenage kids, whatever it might be. But then you ask, okay, so how do you deal with that? What's your go-to pattern? Oh, well, I just make sure everyone else is okay. Okay. And a lot of the work that we can do is kind of identifying why do we act the way that we do. It's how we've developed. Okay, now that we know that we're doing that, can we maybe change a few things so that everyday tasks still will be done, everyday relationships still will be lived, but with a lot less internal friction, a lot less overthinking, a lot less replaying conversations, a lot less judgment and self-blame. And then that causes the exhaustion levels to drop. That causes the fatigue to drop.
So that feeds wonderfully into the theme, isn't it? So that when does that's just life actually become, well, actually, it doesn't have to be this way. But I was talking to somebody last week about precisely this, and she could not see. She was absolutely exhausted emotionally, physically from work. She's a hairdresser, on the go, on her feet the whole time, sole breadwinner. And she was so exhausted. She was on the brink of tears. And I asked her, what is she doing to look after herself? And she said, well, I don't know how to do that. So what would you say, Emily, from an emotional point of view, would be the first stop for her?
I think it's the pause, it's the realization that this is not sustainable. That's a huge thing. It's the pause. There's always enough things to do, but it's saying to yourself, okay, let's stop. And there's so many different things, like Polly said, there's nervous system regulation. There's physical classes, yin classes, everything else. But what I tend to find, and I've been that example. I do every exercise under the sun. And it wasn't until I realised how I deal with all the situations in my life is causing this huge mental exhaustion. I'd still go running, I'd still do yoga, I'd still be around for the kids, I'd still do everything. But the mental exhaustion was intense. And it was only when I realised I behave, I take on everyone's emotional load. The guilt is intense. And then I worked with, Orla on it. And it's like, well, why is that? Well, that's your upbringing. Okay. It completely makes sense. You're not flawed. It completely makes sense why you do that, but it's not serving you now. And simple things like, let them do them. Other people do them. You're there for people, but they're not your responsibility. Some people are obviously children, but it's just reframing your mindset when dealing with all these things. We can't stop working. We can't stop being mums and parents and daughters and friends. We can't stop trying to have a life and do it all. We've fought for that as females, and I want that. But what we do need to stop is that constant internal battle and us making choices based on patterns that served us when we were younger. As we grow up, we need to make it's changed, and that's where that's life, or is it? And I'm 41, and it really only was last year where I changed the way that I wore it as a badge of honor. Totally, I put my kids first no matter what. I put everyone else first no matter what. And I really worked on reframing that, right, and changing things. And then I went into a period of really high stress in December. I went straight back to that pattern. And it was my friends that pointed out to me, Em, you're doing what you used to do. You carry on that way, you're going to go the same way you went last time. So it's really looking in a mirror and figuring out how we, in control of our own destiny, can understand ourselves better so that we can make better decisions.
Yeah, love that. Thanks, Emily. And Polly, from a workplace point of view, what are your thoughts? What's your insight?
Well, I mean, I do work with the individual as well. And I agree with a lot with what Emily said there, definitely. And taking a look at yourself is very interesting, and holding accountability with someone else to go through it is very important, I think, because it can be quite a very sensitive topic for people to realise that they can look after themselves, but they don't know how to do it. But also, you've got the limiting beliefs and challenges the limiting beliefs that we need to challenge because they have been holding us back, and we don't realise we're still living in those patterns. And some people just don't know that that's how they've perfected their life to live around those restrictions, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So then what would you suggest would be the first step?
For me, if there's people that are close to burnout or very stressed, it would be to work one-on-one to help them discover their values, to make them aware of what their patterns are. So that's where the CCR3 profiling is very good for that. But without that as well, you can go through health profiles. So look at data going back of what actually has happened throughout their lives. So you can see a bit of a pattern to help them find a route that is to make sustainable changes. And like Emily said, it's small steps. It really is. It's not a quick fix, and change takes time, and we have to be sensitive to that.
Yeah. So I've got a little note here saying when burnout becomes turnover. What can we explore that? What does that mean?
So I think that's in the workforce, isn't it? It's if you're looking at it from an employee point of view, it's employee turnover, isn't it? I would have thought, Polly.
Oh, I see. Yes, that makes sense. Yep.
Yeah. So with burnout and turnover, basically this can go back to the CCR3 profiling, making sure that staff are in the right roles, because again, Emily said it about adapted behaviour. If people are adapting the behaviour for whatever reason in the workplace to survive or to thrive, it can lead to burnout if it's not their natural strength. So you put extra pressure on yourself, but also you can be a people pleaser and take on too much work. And if you're seen as a good worker and you're very efficient and you do very well, people will put more work on you. So again, there's risk of burnout. So this is where you have to think about boundaries and how much you can actually manage because lifestyle pulls into the workplace as well. You can't separate the two really. So I think it's very important that we look at behaviour in the workplace more so as person-centred.
I think as well, the work that I tend to do with people, it's that relationship dynamic, isn't it? It's like Polly was just saying, those adapted behaviours. You know, you've got relationships with so many different types of people, all different personality styles. And if you're constantly having to adapt your behaviour for your parents, your siblings, your work colleagues, your partner at home, it really can cause you to become, I mean, we probably use overwhelmed on a day-to-day basis rather than burnout, but that overwhelm is so much because you're constantly adapting yourself, moving yourself away from your true values, your true behaviors. We've all got our own, you know, DNA and our own personality profiles and everything else, but if you're constantly having to bend and mold how much you're doing that on a day-to-day basis, that is another reason for that overwhelm, that mental fatigue, that exhaustion. And in the workplace, it leads to burnout, turnover, because you kind of can go, all right, you know, if it's not managed well, that's a loss of an employee, which was nothing we ever want to see. And I've worked in workplaces where that's happened. I'm sure you guys have too.
Actually, talking about that back in the workplace, highly effective and healthy leadership must be around recognizing behavioral patterns of people in your team. But correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's quite rare.
I agree, Kerry. And I think emotional intelligence is something that is only really being focused on in the workplace. But there's been such a shift with well-being in the workplace now that will have to come, and it will have to be more about human-led business, because we can't keep facing the replacement of staff and people burning out. I mean, I could go a bit further. Our NHS can't cope with illness, chronic illness. And so if we educate and help people, or support people, should I say, earlier on, to be more proactive of how to look after themselves, they'll know their limits. And it would change the workplace dynamic. But also, if people are happy in a workplace and you've got a good workforce, then everyone thrives. If they love it, you're going to get the best out of people. So that is the benefit to it.
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm absolutely not swamped. I really love looking into this whole topic about effective leadership and how it can make such a huge difference to the individuals working within a company. But also, I get your point. We have to take responsibility for looking after ourselves too, and realizing, you know, when we need to change those patterns.
So Kerry, in my past, I think this is how I started working with Orla. To go back to Orla, like over 15 years ago, is I was managing a team, and we did this. I was 24-year-old general manager, and I type A personality, very strong. I know how I worked, and I was managing a plethora of different people, all from different backgrounds. And I said to Orla, I need to understand what ticks these people boxes, how they are motivated, what how they communicate. And we did a massive piece of work on it. And that was for me finding the insight years ago into it. And it's such a valuable tool. If you understand that when someone sends you a short, blunt email, it doesn't mean that they're being rude. That's just their communication style. You know, if you've got a sales manager and an audit manager together, it's how can you make them meet in the middle, because they're such different personalities, and how you're not making them adapt their behavior too much. And I think all the work I've done on this over the years, it's only when I started also bringing it into my personal life. It's like executive leadership, noticing patterns, noticing behaviours. But we're all leaders in our own lives as well. And actually, are we noticing those behaviour changes maybe in our partners or our family and friends, or ourselves? And it's trying to bring those tools, those things that we do use in the workplace, and trying to bring them to those relationships at home to make the difference there as well. I think that's quite vital.
Yeah, I totally agree. So just to close up then, a bit of reflection. If someone listening feels pressure is just part of life and saying that's life, what would you say, Polly?
With pressure being part of life, I would challenge that and say we can change to not be under so much pressure. Sometimes even stepping back and going at a slower pace, you can still get the same results. So we don't always have to put ourselves under so much pressure to think we're achieving.
Mm. Yes, indeed. And Emily?
I think, life is busy, and that's what a lovely place we're in for it to be busy. Holidays, families, work, commitments, weddings, anniversaries, all these kind of things. Life is busy. We're always going to be juggling a lot. And that's an exciting opportunity. It's exciting to do that, but it shouldn't be at our own emotional cost. So I think it's about equipping ourselves. It can be just that's life. We're busy and life is exhausting and it's hard and it's, sometimes really hard. Or we can just go, okay, life's busy. That's fine. That's great. But actually, if I can reduce the emotional cost of it, I'm going to get to enjoy it all a lot more. And that's what I'm trying to do myself.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, just as a final closing reflection, I just want to share that over the recent years, what I have done is learn to ask for help. And that's made a massive difference. So, well, thank you so much, Emily and Polly, for sharing those wonderful, wonderful insights. And let's go forth and relieve pressure. And, it doesn't have to be life. We can change it. We do have choices. Thank you for contributing to that.
Thank you so much, Kerry.
Yes, thank you for the invitation.
Bye.
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 Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of That's Life, or Is It? I'm Kerry Dorman, author of The Life Stories of Jenny Lee, and the first one, published in 2025, is available through local bookshops and Waterstones, or indeed Barnes & Noble. If you have a life story to explore with me, please get in touch via the website jennylee.co.uk. Cha-ching!